to everyone that's joining us. Thank you for your time and joining us today. Our topic is coronavirus, rethinking everything to enable today's workforce.
What a past few weeks and months it has been. There's a lot of bad and scary news out there, but I just want to take the time right now to focus on some of the most positive things that I think that are happening. And it is without question that we're all going through an incredibly trying time. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of confusion, isolation for many of us, yet somehow the human spirit is still finding a way to shine bright, and nowhere is that more noticed than in our healthcare community. So this virtual roundtable is really going to focus on this community who works tirelessly day in and day out, putting their own health and lives possibly on the line for complete strangers. If you're looking for some good, warm, happy news, Google heroism in the healthcare community and look up news there. And there's some amazing stories that are just so heartwarming. So today I want to talk about the ways that technology can serve this industry. Obviously, there's many, many ways, but we'll focus more on some of the things that we can do here at Technology Source. Before we start that, I would like to give you a little bit of an overview of who we are. So we are a matchmaker, really, and we find the right solution for organizations around the world. We serve over 60 countries. We have over 200 technology advisors and 200 plus service providers. And we have over 3,500 happy customers. This is just a provider spotlight down there to show you a few of the providers that we do work with. And we have partners and advisors all over the United States. If you are invited to this webinar today, it's likely that one of them reached out to you to tell you about it. So at Technology Source, we have what we call the elements of business success. These are the layers of different technology solutions. So you've got your cybersecurity, spam filter, virus detection, web gateway, all those things that are important. You've got your business optimization, those things like pro services, VR. You've got your software and SaaS type products. You've got connectivity, whether it's bonded lines or SD-WAN. You've got voice and marketing services. Those are a newer service offering that we've just started in the last year and seeing a lot of success. In fact, next week we will have a digital marketing conversation about maintaining a presence and being there and I'm calling it thriving in a virtual world. And that was something that our executive team and I came up with because that's really what we feel like we need to do right now. Mobility, cloud, of course, and infrastructure. Today, I want to please welcome our panelists to this virtual roundtable. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Morning, everyone.
Hi, Gary.
Morning.
And then we also have Eric Applefield on. Eric is standing in for Mr. Ben Descartes. All right. So today we are going to deep dive right into some healthcare concerns. And I'm going to start right off with compliance because that is number one issue that I am always focused on. I'm certified in compliance. I have my CHC certification and have been a compliance officer in the healthcare industry for many years. And so everything I do is with my compliance hat on, and every solution, every vendor that I source for customers when I'm working with the partners and advisors at Technology Source, we're really going to talk about compliance first, because if you're not going to pass the compliance sniff test, it's really not worth engaging that provider. Some of the issues that organizations right now are obviously facing is pandemic planning, and with that comes disaster recovery and the operation continuity of the organization. Then there's policies and procedures. It's likely that these have been triggered due to the pandemic, but we'd also like to talk about what if you don't have policies and procedures in place right now. It's good to work with vendors that have policies and procedures that you can adopt if they're the right policies and procedures. But that can really help you in the face of trying to figure out what to do while you're also in the throes of dealing with an issue. Business associate agreements, so we are going to want to make sure that every vendor that you work with is going to sign and execute those business associate agreements, and we want to ensure that those have limitations of liability to protect your organization. And business impact analysis, at this point, we're aware of what the impact is So this may be a strange time to do a BIA, but we also want to make sure that the organization can help you when the recovery comes. We're going to talk about call reporting and other types of reporting, whether it's fax reporting, to make sure that you are certified, and then data retention policies, as well as, of course, HIPAA compliance, which is still in place right now. And we're also going to want to talk about data privacy. We will talk today a little bit about some of the breaches that are taking place right now because of the coronavirus. I'm not saying it's because of, but in spite of, or in some ways because of. And then, of course, workforce and vendor requirements. So we all know that as a healthcare organization, we have to be checking our employees against the OIG and GSA database checks every single month. And we also want to make sure that our vendors are doing similar and training as well their organization on HIPAA compliance and on the different types of compliance. Because if you're liable for it, passing on that liability to a business associate with a BA agreement is going to be something that is really important to make sure that that liability is actually legitimate. So some of the other issues that, of course, every healthcare compliance person is looking at all revolve around these three things. So physical, technical, and administrative. So as we bring on vendors, we want to talk to them about their physical security measures, what do they have in place, and then of course, how are they going to improve your physical security, as well as technical. So what type of technical, is it a SaaS program? Is it some type of solution, a script, something that's going to add a technical safeguard? And then there's of course administrative, which would include things like training and workforce checks. Every single organization is going to have other issues that they're going to face regardless of the compliance. Of course, compliance difficulties, but interoperability of their applications, upkeep of old technology as things age, physician adoption. I find that sometimes the hardest people to convince on new software and applications, even if they're highly compliant or highly helpful, are the physicians or the nurses who are supposed to be benefiting from these. Oftentimes, partly that's because they have to learn something new, or it may kind of impede their workflow, which obviously we want to limit that. And then asset programs, including purchasing, shipping, configuring, and tracking. One of the solutions that we'll talk about today might eliminate 90% of that, because those can be really frustrating. Of course, there's cybersecurity and data privacy threats, and so some of those are going to be discussed today. And then training and documentation. I know everybody knows this, but this is just a really quick refresher on the DOJ's 7 elements of compliance found under the federal sentencing guidelines. So we're going to want to make sure we have those policies and procedures in place. We're going to want to make sure we have a compliance officer on staff. We're going to want to make sure we have training and education, and we've developed effective lines of communication with your toll-free 1-800 number, those types of things. We want to make sure you have internal monitoring and auditing in place, and that you have very well publicized disciplinary guidelines in place. We also want to make sure that you are able to promptly detect offenses and issue corrective action. And that hidden eighth element, one that we also want to make sure all of our business associates can help with, is providing response during those annual risk assessments. And so every single vendor that we would want to bring to an organization that is under compliance regulations would want to have considered all of these elements. Other things to consider right now are these lack of resources. Right now, we're talking not clinical resources. Everything we're talking about right now is technical. And so lack of resources could be a budget, right? Because right now, money is going towards one direction. What about the other direction? There's constant pressure right now. There's lack of time. There may be a lack of knowledge for some organizations when it comes to technology. I've known and have worked for many healthcare organizations, and in my time have seen some of the smartest people, but yet have also seen some of the most outdated, outmoded technology. And there can be organizations that are really afraid of change, with poor policies in place for any type of change. There can be a lot of slow action, and could be stuck in admin during those slow actions. For example, and this is just a super quick story, I was working with a healthcare system kind of in central Southern California area, and we were in the process of working with them to do a business impact analysis, their BIA. And we put together the forms, and we were going and shopping it around from department to department. And in the process, I'm like, you guys need to get this going faster, because during this process, I've uncovered that your disaster recovery plans are really weak, if any. And then it was like kind of put back on me, and there was this huge amount of back and forth. And so basically it got stuck, right, in an admin process. And I'm thinking this whole time, if they just had some disaster recovery, and super sad, and this is public knowledge, but the organization was then breached. They were hit with ransomware, and they didn't have disaster recovery in place, and a huge amount of that data for their patients was lost. So this is the type of thing that happens when you get stuck in an admin. This is the compliance reality for most businesses. It looks pretty scary. They have tons of organizations looking in on them. But let's look at the healthcare compliance industry. You've got all those same organizations, but then you add in state and federal regulations. You have the health plans looking in and auditing. You may have even local regulations, county regulations. So there's a ton of concerns out there. That's why I'm constantly hitting home the compliance reality that healthcare organizations are facing, because it is really stressful and it's difficult for them to meet those demands. And the fines, we're talking, potentially millions of dollars of fines if they just make a mistake. I was rehearsing this a little bit the other day, and my son overheard me. He's 17, and he said, "What? They get fined if they get hacked? Well, how did they get fined?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they get fined because of their lack of, protection of their patient's data, their EPHI." So it's kind of a big wake-up call for a lot of people who don't realize that. Of course, those in the healthcare industry already know this. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about compliance. Let's talk about some really quick data breaches that they're not quick, but I'll go over them really quick, some data breaches. So there was this truth at the time of the coronavirus that was put out there by some of the top hacking organizations. And they said, as of March 15th, we're not going to hack during the coronavirus any healthcare organization. So this is kind of do-good, feel-good thing. And so that was kind of cool. I thought, wow, that's great. Well, did that happen? No, that evaporated, and that did not happen. In fact, we'll go over some today. So the first one we'll talk about is the Illinois Public Health website. This was hit with ransomware amid the coronavirus. Now, of course, it happened on, I think, the 14th of March, and they made this promise to the hackers on the 15th. So I don't consider that okay, though. So they basically took down this healthcare system's website with ransomware configuration that was very detailed and very sophisticated. The provider then contacted the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security while working with a consulting firm to restore their site. This was spotted when staff members went in and saw that there was some issues with their own files that could no longer be accessed. So that's what ransomware does. Fortunately, this provider was smart and had moved their email accounts, their EPHI, and all of that data to the cloud about 6 months before this ransomware took effect. And so they were okay. So that is a happy story, other than their website. And currently, do not go to their website, but you can go to their social media page for more updates. Another one, and this one sucks because they were specifically trying to help with the cure, right? And they're in there working on insights for the coronavirus, for COVID-19. They're a biotech firm, and they are sequencing cells from patients who've recovered from the coronavirus to discover potential treatments. And this ransomware attack left some of their sensitive information because they have genomic information, patient information, different types of diagnosis. They stole over 1 terabyte of data, and this human-operated ransomware first began targeting the healthcare IT sector in 2019. And they are currently working with a third-party investigation team. And this is just the second research firm to be hit that has been working hard on this virus. The other one is the Hammersmith Medicines Research Group. This one's out of the UK, and the patient information that was leaked there is name, date of birth, social, healthcare questions, things like that. These are scary times. Some of the other information was positive HIV and hepatitis and drug abuse. So that's been leaked now for people who were being tested through this program. And Microsoft has seen a huge uptick in ransomware operations targeting hospitals as well as healthcare organizations. A lot of this is found through publicly accessible VPNs, and these are targeted by ransomware. And they're known vulnerabilities that are being talked about, but there's a lot of unknown vulnerabilities. So security researchers and multiple organizations are saying, really be careful. And I have just a few more statistics here. So 17% of work from home users handle PHI, and that is a statistic from before the coronavirus. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of ePHI. And for everybody who doesn't know, because I know there's a few, I see a lot of healthcare organizations, but I see a lot of others who may not be familiar. ePHI is electronic protected health information, which is most health information these days. So organizations are relying on collaboration tools and sending things back and forth across there. And then healthcare organizations, even though there's a lot going on, are still working at 91% relying on fax machines. We actually have a provider today who works with a large national operation who sends, I think, millions of faxes every day. And so they're going to talk to you a little bit about that service today. Weaponized attacks have doubled every 14 seconds. They're still falling victim. And then 24% of organizations feel that bring your own device is a weak link. And that is really current statistics. So consumer complaints have doubled by the FTC. The number of emails that have phony information about the virus. Like, for example, imagine your staff go home or they're at home and they open up information from thinking that they're getting some payroll assistance loan or some type of national check that's supposed to be going out, and they think they're supposed to be entering information. They can then fall susceptible to some of these tricks. Phony websites, malicious files, spam emails. So as you can see, it's 15 times the phishing attack from January to March. So that truth that was apparently there from some of the top hackers, I can't speak for all of them, but it's obvious that there's no rest for them. And then we all know this, but organizations are affected massively, and these are some of the top organizations that are being affected, and healthcare is right up there with some of the top impact. From a helping standpoint, helping your organization, so if you're struggling, if you're looking for any technology solution that maybe some that we didn't even talk about today, just reach out to us, and I will close out and let Stephanie close us out here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sonia. So again, thanks everyone for your time today. Also, just know we're hosting these every week, same day, Tuesday, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific time. So feel free to join us again next week or forward this information. All of the registrations can be done from the same link that you registered on. So feel free to share this with whoever you feel like thinks it might be relevant. Again, thanks everyone for joining us today, and we will reconnect with you next week.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe, guys. Thank
Bye.
you.
Join us every Tuesday from now till May at 10 a.m. Pacific Time for the Technology Source Virtual Roundtable Series.